I never thought the smell of death would be the way retirement greeted me. You work your whole life, breathing in metal dust and machine oil, counting down the days until you can finally just listen to the wind and the splash of a bass in your own patch of paradise. And then one morning, you wake up and all that peace is gone. It was just before dawn, the sky barely changing color, when I stepped outside and caught that stench. Chemical, sharp, like somebody had poured bleach straight into my lungs. I looked out over my lake, the place I'd worked 35 years for, and saw my bass, my bluegill, dozens of them floating belly up, their white sides flashing like little surrender flags in the sunrise. And there's this rainbow slick dancing across the water, pretty if you didn't know what it meant. That's when it hit me, hard and cold, that somebody had poisoned my dream. I'm Frank M. Mallister, master fabricator, blue collar to the bone, a guy who always figured if you kept your head down and worked your knuckles raw, life might just leave you alone. I bought 15 acres of woods and a spring-fed lake. Quiet, untouched, a place to be left in peace. But it turned out, peace is a luxury somebody else gets to decide if you're worthy of. I checked the trail camera I'd strapped to an old oak out back, just to see if any deer were moving through. What I found instead, grainy, black and white, time-stamped 3:14 a.m., was a white pickup, Oak Ridge Heights logo on the side, rolling up to my shoreline. Two figures in coveralls, hauling barrels. They pushed him right up to the water, cracked the lids, and poured glowing, white-hot sludge into my sanctuary. I watched, heart thudding, as poison hit the lake, killing everything I'd worked so hard to protect. And you want to know how it started? Not with some big, dramatic showdown, but with a woman in white heels struggling up my gravel driveway, her shoes sinking into the mud, her nose wrinkled like she'd just stepped in something foul. Victoria St. Clair, president of the Oak Ridge Heights HOA, self-appointed queen of the neighborhood, ruler of everything she could see over her manicured lawns and million-dollar houses. She looked at my hand-built cabin, every board hammered by me, and acted like it was a crime scene. Said it didn't fit the community's aesthetic, whatever that meant. I told her, polite but firm, that I didn't answer to her or her HOA, that my property was outside her kingdom. She gave me that smile, wide, fake, cold, and turned on her heel, perfume trailing behind her like a warning. "We'll see about that, Mr. Mallister," she said, and I swear the air dropped 10 degrees. I should have known it was just beginning. The petty calls to the county inspector came first. Anonymous tips about debris, complaints about code violations. I lost days walking property lines with county guys who apologized, shaking their heads at the ridiculousness. Then her landscaping crews started parking their trucks at dawn right up against my property, idling diesel until my coffee tasted like exhaust. That accidental herbicide overspray that killed off my tomatoes. 20 years of seeds, gone, the leaves curling up black and dead. The foreman just shrugged and blamed the wind, but the wind only ever blew in one direction, right toward my garden. That's the thing about being a machinist. After a while, you stop believing in coincidence. When a system fails the same way, over and over, it's sabotage. So I started treating it like a job. I documented every noise, every truck, every odd interaction. My peaceful woods turned into a surveillance post. Me, watching, waiting because I knew it was coming. And when the fish died, it wasn't just a shot across the bow. It was war. I took my evidence, the trail cam footage, the dead bass, the oily rainbow on the water, and marched straight into the monthly HOA board meeting. The place reeked of lavender cleaner and old money. Victoria sat at the head table, flanked by her little court, glaring at me like I'd dragged mud into her palace. She tried to have me silenced. This meeting is for residents only, but I held up my flash drive and told the room her people had poisoned the lake, their water table. Silence hit the room, thick, heavy, shocked. But Victoria? She just leaned back, smiled, and pulled a folder from her briefcase. "Mr. Mallister staged this himself for insurance money," she said, showing off 3 statements from witnesses who claimed they'd seen me dump chemicals in my own lake. The air went out of the room. Her lie was so big, so bold, I almost laughed. She banned me from the premises right then, pounded the gavel so hard it echoed like a gunshot. But in her arrogance, she left her folder on the table. I waited in the lot, slipped back in once the crowd cleared out, hands shaking. I opened the binder, took pictures of invoices, emails, all kind of paperwork that told a different story. Unpaid disposal bills, messages about alternative cost-saving measures, directives to handle it quietly. It was bigger than me, bigger than a feud between neighbors. It was greed, plain and simple. Corporate greed dressed up as community management. I took it all, every photo, every lab report, and drove straight to the state EPA, not the local cops Victoria probably played golf with. That's where I met Agent Miller, a guy who looked like he'd seen it all and hated every minute. I showed him everything: dead fish, water samples, the video, the emails. He went from bored bureaucrat to bloodhound in 5 seconds flat, tracing chemical names on the reports: methylene chloride, trichloroethylene, toxins that kill fish, poison kids, cause cancer, seep right into the groundwater half the county depends on. When he realized it could affect the protected wetlands downstream, he said one word: prison. But Victoria didn't back down. Days later, a lawyer sent me a cease and desist, $50,000 for defamation and emotional distress. Paper warfare, trying to scare me into silence. They figured I was just an old man with a dead lake, easy to roll over. But they forgot machinists know about leverage. You find a weak point, you apply pressure, and even the biggest machine will fail. The real twist? Victoria hired a private eye, Detective Reynolds, an old-school gumshoe with a camera and a conscience. He came clean to me, told me she'd offered him $5,000 to plant barrels behind my shed and find them with his camera, frame me for the crime. He said he couldn't do it, wouldn't cross that line. That was the first crack in her armor, and it showed me just how desperate she was getting. Desperation is dangerous. The next attack was calculated. Somebody cut the main water line into my basement, flooding my shop, ruining everything. The insurance adjuster took one look and said, "Pipes don't cut themselves, Frank." It was sabotage, plain as day, and the only folks who knew where to dig worked for Victoria. She even tried to buy off Martha, my neighbor, 80 years old and still sharp as a tack. Showed up on her porch with a briefcase full of cash, $10,000 if Martha would sign a paper saying she saw me dump chemicals. Martha threw her out, but the fear in her eyes made my blood boil. Victoria was willing to terrorize old women just to save her own skin. So I went on offense. I contacted an investigative reporter, Elena Rossi, the kind of journalist who never leaves a stone unturned. I dumped everything on her desk: the photos, the EPA reports, the witness tampering, the sabotage. Elena started digging into the HOA's finances. Turns out, Victoria had been bleeding the community dry, embezzling $250,000 through fake landscaping contracts, shuffling money into shell companies, trying to hide her gambling husband's debts. The chemical dumping? A cover-up, pure and simple, because there wasn't any money left to pay for legal disposal. While Elena prepared her expose, Agent Miller called me, his voice tight. The chemicals had reached the Silver Creek Nature Preserve, home to the endangered spotted salamander. Now it was a federal crime, a RICO case, the kind they use against organized crime. Victoria must have known the noose was tightening, because that's when the personal attack started. Rumors online about me being a violent ex-vet, my tires slashed at the grocery store, whispers in town that made old friends look away. I had to call my old CO just to get my service record cleared and my name back. But the final straw, Victoria's husband, Charles, came to my door in the pouring rain, briefcase in hand, face haggard. He offered me $50,000, cold hard cash, if I just dropped the complaint, sign an NDA, let them get away with it. I looked at that money, then at the little red light blinking on my hidden camera, recording every word. I told him bribing a federal witness carries a 15-year sentence, and watched him pale as the reality sank in. The trap was set. The next community meeting was packed, the air electric with tension. Victoria tried to push through the budget, ignore the stares, ignore the phones lighting up as Elena's article hit the news. I stood up, just a guy in a flannel shirt and work boots, and plugged my laptop into the projector. The screen filled with images, her brother dumping chemicals, the money trails, the video of her husband offering hush money. The room gasped. Victoria froze. And then the doors burst open. Agent Miller, marshals in tactical gear, striding right up the aisle. Victoria St. Clair, you're under arrest for conspiracy, wire fraud, Clean Water Act violations, and witness tampering. The handcuffs went on, her protest drowned out by the roar of the crowd. Folks who'd been bullied for years, finally tasting justice. Her husband was arrested in the parking lot, caught shredding documents. The HOA was dissolved, the assets seized, every cent put toward cleaning up the lake and the preserve. 6 months later, I sat on my porch, sun setting over water clear as glass. Martha's daughter, Julie, had moved back to help out, and somehow, we'd found each other in a mess. We watched a heron stalk the dock, hunting fingerling bass we'd restocked, and I realized I'd started out wanting nothing but to be left alone. But sometimes, when you fight for yourself, you end up building a community stronger than any fence or gate. Funny, isn't it, how people with a taste of power think they can crush whoever stands in their way? That you're just supposed to shut up? Take it. Let them win because it's easier. But is that how it's supposed to be? When you see something wrong, even if it doesn't touch you directly, do you have a duty to speak up, to push back, to risk everything for what's right? Or is silence the price of peace? They lost, in the end, not because I was richer or smarter, but because I just wouldn't give up. That's something you can't buy. What would you have done? Walked away with the 50 grand, or stood your ground and watched the world burn to see justice done? Drop your answer in the comments, because I have a feeling this fight against the HOA tyrants is just getting started. If you made it to the end, thank you. Means more than you know. Hit that like, tell me your thoughts below, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss the next one. See you down the road.